Okay. So before we actually open a Unity project, I'm gonna quickly explain what Git and GitHub are. So basically, Git is a version control software for files. It helps you keep track of changes in your files. Basically, what you have to do, if you're going from the command line, you specify what files you want to be tracked by Git, and then you actually update those changes within Git. And then if you're working on an external repository, you can then push those files to that repository. That way you can share files with other people. And that's what GitHub is used for primarily. It's just a online service for hosting GitHub or Git repositories. And I'll show you all how to create one and then clone it
Okay.
to your laptop or desktop. Where's Safari on here?
That's not Safari, it's on Chrome.
Oh, you're right. So this is our Game Builders Club GitHub account. So I'll just go over here and click New. We'll call it Spring Workshops. And then I'll make it public, so if any of y'all want to reference this later, you can see it. I'll skip a README for now, but that's basically just a description for your project. So if someone visits your repo, that way they can get a quick summary of what your work is about. And then I will add a git ignore. That's a special Git file that just ignores certain files. But that way you're not committing tons of large files that you might not need or other people might not need. It's a way to save space and a way to save time. And they have a Unity one, a pre-made template to use, so it's nice and easy to include. So I'll just go ahead and hit create. So now we have the repository set up. The easiest way to interact with GitHub and Git on your computer, in my opinion, is GitHub Desktop, which you can download just by going to, if you just Google download GitHub Desktop, it'll be the first thing that comes up. It's very easy to install, doesn't take long at all. So I'll go ahead and go to our GitHub Desktop right now. I will go to, so I'm going to clone it. Basically cloning is just creating a copy or getting the copy of the repo onto your computer. So I'll go ahead and I created it. Oh, I think I need to, sorry, I have to close this and reopen it for the changes to go through. All right, so clone. There we go. So now we have Spring Workshops. Now I'll go ahead and specify where you can choose the local path for it. For me, I'm saving it to desktop, workshop dash spring 23 S23. And then, so I'll go ahead and hit clone. It's copying over. And so now within GitHub Desktop, I am in my Git repository. There's a concept known as branching in Git. Your commits are made in a tree-like structure. Your default branch is main, and it's just self-explanatory. It's just the main branch that commits are being put on. You can also branch off into other branches if you want your work to be isolated. You can name them basically anything you want. And then also, once you're done working on a branch and you're ready to integrate those changes with the main branch, there's something called Git merging. I won't spend a lot of time on it now, but that's just the general process of dividing up work with the repository and then integrating it back together once it's completed. I will go ahead and create the project now just so y'all can see what happens when files are changed. So we have, we should have Unity. Oh, see, yeah, this will work. So I'll go ahead and hit new project. I'm in the Unity Hub. Now, by the way, it's the application used to manage all of your Unity projects. So I hit new project and create a 2D project. I'll call it workshop project. Now specify location. desktop. So you need to put it in your Git repository for it to be tracked. So I'll create the project. And this will open up soon. So this is just like a meta file, but you can see one file changed. Well, that's the commit I made when I made the repository. Now more are coming in when the actual Uni file is being created. In the git ignore, we can change something. A lot of these are small meta files, but I'll save it for now and change it later, and then that way it'll be updated when you all go to make your own versions.
What's a meta file?
Well, it's just like metadata, like small files containing metadata that you don't need.
No. I don't know anything about them.
Just reference data about the state of like the files you are using that updated every time there's a change, but you don't really need them. They're just used by Git.
This is the main way you work on the same project, because Unity doesn't actually really allow you to
Mhm.
work on the same project at once. You have to install GitHub and then make the clone as we've just shown, and then when you make changes, you upload them to the GitHub, and all the people in your group can download them to their computer so that they have your changes on their project.
Yep. And then let's see. So it'll take a minute for it to open, but yeah, it's basically the whole idea. It's a nice way to collaborate with people. You know, you don't want to work on the same file at the same time, especially if you're on the same branch. It's how you corrupt the file. When you go to merge, which is again taking two separate branches and creating or taking two separate branches and merging all the data on one with the other branch. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
So we should never work on the same file with two people at the same time. We should always have one person on each file.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice way for like to set up division of labor too. So you can have people working on different things.
Yeah, because one person's will overwrite the others.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but it wouldn't corrupt it if you had two people at the same time?
It probably would.
Just like by accident, like two people open at the same time, they're working on like just some random thing and then they both upload it, and like that wouldn't have to be, disastrous.
Well, if you're on the same like branch, whoever like, so if you commit something and change it, the other people have to pull your changes before they push theirs. And if there's when I say pull, that means like take the most current update from the remote repository and put it on your computer. So you have to do that before you push your changes, which is take the changes you made and put them on the. Yeah, well, it will say that there's conflicts, and you can either have your changes go through or just discard your changes. So yeah, at that point you basically have to choose, which obviously you don't want because somebody's work is just going to be erased.
So every time someone in your group works on something else, you have to download that before you yourself can start working on another thing?
You can
Well-
work on it, but you can't push your updates until you've downloaded all the updates that are waiting to be
Yeah.
downloaded.
Okay.
Like when it says like fetch origin here, what is this one? Yeah, I'll skip that for now. I'll see. So I'll just make a commit. So like initial
By the way, this is being recorded, so you can view this video again
or
anytime.
create project. So I'm committing it to the main branch. So I think it froze. Hold on. There we go. What's it doing?
I'd be mad about all the files.
Sorry. Oh, so we do have some large files on here. Okay, I'll go do that later. But I'll commit it now. Commit anyway. Dude, what files were created? All right. So basically, I don't know why those are there. There's some larger files that we don't need, but you just hit commit, and then you can push it to the remote repository. And when you need to pull something, like I was just mentioning, it'll show up right here. It would say like pull changes with a down arrow. But yeah, so we have the project open. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Rain.
Alright. So, really quick, I just want to mention, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that this error shows up whenever it's trying to track all of these files that we did not explicitly ignore in the gitignore. Because this project's already set up and it would require multiple like pushing and pulling, it might not work immediately. So I'm not going to show the demonstration for what it will actually look like. But what I will try to show you is how to edit the gitignore so that that does not occur. So in here where we see the initial commit, really? It never has? That never happened?
No, I've never had that
Okay.
happen.
Well, I've had that happen before, but the you can go to just like once you click that Unity gitignore, whenever you make your project, it has these slashes at the beginning of these first couple lines. I don't know why. I think it's just because it like will include all of the info. But if you just delete these first slashes on each side and then commit it, it should avoid those issues. I'm not 100% sure that that was the problem, but I just know that usually whenever Git is saying, where is it? It says like,
Oh,
you know,
wait, you can show 'em
2000, what?
You can show them how the pool had changed now because you committed that.
Okay. So I just committed a change to the gitignore, right? So like I made that change on the server, and then now I can pull the change by clicking up here. It says pull origin. Yeah, it's already it's being a baby about it, but try to if you can and if you remember, try to make that change to the gitignore file beforehand, because I think that might cause that issue. Yes.
Okay, well, there's no way to answer this question besides just, you guys could make the repository for all so you don't mess it up, couldn't you?
I think we have a repo set up
Yeah.
that we were gonna
Yeah,
like.
we could.
Yeah, like it would just require everybody branching a lot to different things, but we can make an example repo. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't like make one individually for everyone. We're just
Yeah.
have one set up,
What do you mean?
like just like a set of instructions set up to where you can make your own. Because I can walk an individual person through on how to do it, but if you're gonna follow along for tutorials, everyone's gonna need their own.
Every group.
Well,
For like the main projects.
Yeah, for the main project, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Every group will need one.
Okay. Any more questions? I know we made that a little bit confusing, and the error didn't. What was kind of annoying, but okay. Now we'll get to the actual Unity part. Where okay, so we have a unit. This is what whenever you open up Unity, this is what it should look like. You've got a couple of different windows here, and I know the text is actually really small, so I apologize for that. But hopefully you can see. So up here we have a window called the hierarchy. Here we have the scene window / scene view, game window / game view, the inspector up here, the project window, and over here is the console. I'm going to try to be a little bit brief. We only have 10 minutes left or so. So the hierarchy shows you a list of all of the like objects that are in your scene at this time. Up here you see the name of the current scene. Basically, like each Unity project is made up of scenes. A scene is just I guess you could call it like a single like piece of the game. You could make a main menu scene, then you could make a game scene, then you could make a I don't know, like a credits scene. Like each time that you see the screen change the content that's on it, like drastically, like from a main menu to playing the game, that's like from UI to the actual game, you know, you're usually going to switch between scenes. Currently in the scene we have what's called a main camera, which is what Unity uses to show you the things that are in your game. So that's the main camera right now. You can actually see what it's seeing. It's nothing. It's just a bunch of blue stuff. And if we hit play up here, which you use to like run your current build of the game, you'll see something very similar. So this window has switched from the scene view to the game view automatically because we hit this play button. And this is what the game looks like. It's beautiful. It's a blue screen of death, really. And so hopefully by the end of this, you'll have something that's a little bit more interesting than that. So inside this scene view, you can manipulate the objects you have, and you can also add new ones. So if you right-click, you can create a variety of different kinds of objects. These are just mainly the default ones. This is a 2D game, so I'm going to make a 2D square. And just like that, we've created a square, and our game is already way cooler because now we have a nice little white square to look at. You'll notice now that I added this square into the scene. By the way, this big rectangle right here represents what your camera is seeing. And so it's in the rectangle, so now the square shows up. And you can probably kind of guess that like changing the ways that this square works in the game is how the game is actually kind of built. I mean, you could probably like replace this square with a sprite from a game and then give it some movement controls with some scripting. And then you have a little dude that's running around in your little screen. And so that's mainly just how a lot of the Unity programming and game building is done. You'll notice also that I'm going to have to abbreviate some stuff. We can get into more like in-depth stuff in later tutorials. In the scene view, you can right-click to click and drag around so you can look around. And then if you're like interacting with objects, you can move them around. Here's a move tool you can click on. You can click and move this around to different areas. So if you wanted the square to be up in the corner or something, you could move it there. That's the like sort of basic pieces of the scene view. Over here is called the inspector. This is where you do a lot of your programming side of things outside of scripting. It lists just basically the like sort of options that object has that you have selected. So we have selected right here is the main camera. You see it's selected over here in the hierarchy. You'll notice it has a transform, which is basically just a way to indicate its position. We can move that transform around, and you'll see this main camera on the bottom right is moving as we move the main camera. You see something different. It basically looks like things are moving. And we can reset that to 0, 0, 0. You can just manipulate the position and rotation and the size of each of these objects. And it also has a camera attached to it. So basically what this main camera is actually really an empty object, which is something with nothing except for a transform. And then you added a camera component to it. And you can probably tell like there's a lot of components here. I mean, you look right here, there's all of these components. So it's ways that you can add quick settings to an object. And most of these components are in the form of scripts. And we'll get to scripts momentarily. Down here at the project is very much just like a file explorer, like you have on your Windows or Mac or something like that. It's made up of file folders. You can open things up. This right here is our sample scene, which we have up here. And right-clicking and creating things, you can create a lot more stuff right here, such as scripts or folders or even sprites if you're trying to make prefabs, which we can talk about later. And the last main window is the console. The console just shows basically anything that's supposed to be printed into a console for whatever purposes that might be is shown here. It shows you things like errors, warnings. If you try to purposely print something into it, it'll show up there. And that's the main thing that we're going to try to end this up on, is printing into the console with a hello world script, which should be mostly simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a C# script, and we'll just call it hello world. Then we're going to open it up by double clicking on it, and it's going to take Visual Studio like 10 minutes to load.
Oh, side note, make sure you guys are all using the same version of Unity Editor, because if you keep switching between them, Unity really doesn't like that, and it always warns you like your files can get corrupted. So it'll tell you what version was last opened on Unity, so you know what version your teammates are using, but just make sure to install that version.
Load operation failed. Swag.
Oh, sorry.
I was thinking about the GitHub, and you showed when one person starts the GitHub, they create the file in Unity, and then they upload their stuff. So does everybody have to create the project separately on their own computer, or when you download it, will your computer automatically create a Unity project that matches that?
It creates it, yeah. You specify a folder, and then when you open Unity Hub, it might not recognize that there's a project, but there's a drop down saying open remote projects or something. Or open and then the drop down, add project from disk, and then you find the folder that GitHub saved it to, and then it shows up in your menu.
All right. So inside of a default C# script in Unity, it'll include a lot of things, including some sort of things that it inherits up here. The name of the class up here, it's using monobehavior. All of these things are things we'll get into down the line. It's a little bit complicated for beginner stuff. But right here you have two default methods, which are just things that are run as part of the program. You have start, and you have update. Start, as you can kind of guess from the name, will automatically run whenever your program starts. And then update will run every single frame that your program updates. So think of like a game as like 60 frames a second or like 30 frames. Each one of those frames, it's running what's in this update. So if you have a 60 frame game, it'll run update 60 times in 1 second. So you can imagine update runs very fast. We're going to get rid of update for right now because we don't need to use it. And in start, to do a hello world, we're going to use the console command debug.log hello world. Debug.log is just a way, it's usually used to, like it says, debug things. You can use it like if something is not working and you're trying to find out why. You can put a debug statement and say it worked or it did not work. And then whenever that piece of your code runs or doesn't run, you can look on the console and see if it did or did not run, and that'll indicate whether or not it's broken or why. Make sure you save that. And also pay close attention if people here have not done any programming at all. It's capital debug dot capital log and then parentheses, and inside those parentheses you do 2 quotation marks, and inside the 2 quotation marks you write hello world. Afterwards you do a semicolon, and then you hit save. Make sure it's in the start, and then we're going to go ahead and we'll let it recompile. Give it a sec. We'll go ahead and take this script and we're going to drag it onto the main camera. Really, any object does the same thing, but you should have a main camera whenever you create the project. If you didn't create any of this stuff with me, then that's fine. And you'll notice now that the Hello World script is attached to the main camera, and if we hit play, it'll reload everything, and then it should print into our console Hello World. Playing, and then in the console you see it says hello world. Look at that. That's so nice and pretty, isn't it? Yeah, thank you. All right, and then that I think is time, so that will conclude our first voyage into Unity programming. Very simple stuff, I know, at the beginning, but we promise it'll get more complicated and look more like a game as the weeks go on. So thank you guys for coming. I hope you guys had a good time meeting your team leads and everything.